complete insanity. A wild report comes out that the Brooklyn Nets are doing everything in their power to go and acquire the number 2 pick in the draft from the San Antonio Spurs, and the Spurs are having none of it. And we are going to break this down here on Spurs Digest with your host, Keenan Warner. And if you guys haven't yet, make sure you guys take a spur of the moment to get every Spurs moment by hitting that free subscribe button, because apparently 75% of you guys have not done that yet. And that is insane, almost as insane as this report. But according to league chatter, the Brooklyn Nets have engaged in an all-in push for Dylan Harper. If true, it says a lot about how guards of his caliber are scarce. We obviously have seen the Cade Cunningham comparisons because of the way that he plays with the poise, the ability to get to the lane, facilitate. He can shoot from the outside, though he's not lethal. He is someone who can shoot. And the Nets have dangled future first vet deals to try to leap up, but the San Antonio Spurs are not budging. Spurs reportedly locked in with conviction. And you love to see that, because we've heard so much. There's been, okay, Dylan Harper is not a lock at 2. There has been Dylan Harper's absolutely a lock at 2. He's been involved in Giannis trades. Up first, they was involved in Kevin Durant trades, which was insane. Dylan Harper has been everywhere, everywhere pretty much but the San Antonio Spurs, and it continues on here. So, just to talk about what would happen in light of the Dylan Harper going to the Brooklyn Nets, because this is interesting in the package that they would send. It's interesting to see what Brooklyn would be able to offer, and if it's something we would even be interested in. So let's highlight what they could and why it wouldn't or would be interesting here in a moment. Brooklyn has the 8th pick in the draft. So if you didn't know, Brooklyn has the 8th pick. They also have the 19th pick, the 26th, and the 27th pick in this year's draft via New York and a couple other teams. And then they have multiple picks next year. A lot of this is due to the Mikal Bridges trade, where they got 5 first-round picks in that. So they have the 8th pick in the draft. We clearly have the 2nd. When you're going through and ranking these, this is all via CBS, this mock draft and this big board. So you've got Cooper, Harper, Bailey, Edgecombe, and Trey Johnson as your top 5 prospects in this draft, according to CBS. And then you've got Con, Fears, Boyles he's actually nice, out of South Carolina. You got Kasparis, you've got Derek Queen, Malowach, and then Demon. That is going to be roughly your top 12. When you get after that top 12, Carter Bryant, Noah Tor, or Trayor, Nick Clifford, Danny Wolf, Jace Richardson, Cedric Howard, and then there are multiple players out there that are interesting picks, Rasheer Fleming, and then you can go on and on from there. But clearly, CBS has the Spurs taking Dylan Harper with the 2nd pick. Duh. He is the 2nd best player in this draft. That's a complete consensus. Everybody understands he's the 2nd best player in this draft. Moving on, you've got Malowach. That is who they have the Nets taking at 8. That's an interesting pick for the Knicks, knowing they have Nick Claxton. So that is basically saying that Nick Claxton possibly could be moved. You go with a double big lineup, depending on what they do. It doesn't matter what Brooklyn does. We don't really care about Brooklyn, other than the fact that they're looking to trade up into that. I show you this pick here specifically because if we were obviously to trade back, we want to know what we'd be able to get. And proposed trade, the possibility of the Nets sending that pick to San Antonio would probably look something like this along the lines. If it's hard to see, I apologize. But essentially what that is we acquire Cam Johnson. We acquire the 8th pick of this year's draft, the 19th pick of this year's draft, and a 2026 first from next season. And then they get Keldon Johnson, make the salaries match, and honestly, in this case, Keldon Johnson becomes a guy. He is a good player, don't get me wrong, but Keldon Johnson becomes a guy in this scenario that doesn't really need to be rostered by the San Antonio Spurs, because we're going to have depth from these picks. We're going to have depth already from what we have on the roster, and he just becomes a guy who is talented but not going to be able to utilize his talent on this roster due to minutes and the not need for him. And then, of course, we trade that second pick because that's what Brooklyn's looking for. What this shows here is that our lineup would be, our starting five right now would be this. At the 1, De'Aaron Fox. At the 2, Stephon Castle. At the 3, Cam Johnson. At the 4, Harrison Barnes. At the 5, Victor Wembanyama. This is before any draft picks are taken. And then off the bench, you would have Devin Vassell, Charles Bassey, and a few others. That's what this is saying here, essentially. Or a different big, not Bassey, depending on where we go in on all the free agent period and everything. So that's essentially what would be going on with our lineup before the picks. And then with the picks, you would get most likely Malawach because we do need ourselves a backup big. You could go with the 2 bigs because of the way that both of them play. Malawach is a great rim protector, a great rim runner. He also can shoot from the outside a bit. He's a guy who you feel could develop a 3-point shot, especially one on a pick and pop situation where he is like a true spot up. Something like what Miles Turner is. Miles Turner can shoot from the outside, but he is not a guy who is a lethal shooter, even though he is, at some points he can get pretty hot from 3, but a pick and pop, pick and roll guy, great defender. That's kind of what the role of Malawach is, with more upside and potential of like high level stardom at that role rather than being the Miles Turner level, which is a quality starter in this league. Obviously, he is in a 2-2 battle in the finals right now, and he's been playing pretty decent, shooting not great, but defensively been good. At the 19th pick in this year's draft, you then get to a guy where you could maybe get, if Carter Bryant drops, you could get Carter Bryant. Let's go back to showing what would be around that. Maybe you get Cedric Howard there, a guy who is a long wing who has a lot of potential and could develop. You could go get a guy like Asa Newell, another backup big if you want to go that route, because we are depth. We do have a lot of depth at the guard position. There are plenty of people you could grab at that 19th pick. So there's talent to be grabbed there at 19. Plus, you get a next year's first from Brooklyn, which looks like it can be top 10, though they're going to be getting the number 2 draft pick in Dylan Harper, and they're going to get Keldon Johnson. They have a couple pieces there, Nick Claxton, and maybe a couple others in free agency. We'll see how that goes. They're most likely not going to be even a play-in team next year. They're a team that's going to be a 2 or 3 year rebuild, and if they think they can go up to 2 to get a guy who is consensus the best guard in this draft, and consensus one of the best guard prospects we've had in the last few years, yeah, they're going to have to pay a heavy toll. And the 8th, the 19th, and a first next year, they might even ask for another first. All of that being said, I still wouldn't do it because of the fact of how good Dylan Harper is. That's what the trade would highlight. That's what we would most likely be getting, something along those lines. I wanted to highlight that so we would understand that this just wouldn't be in the air, and like what would be the return for it. Most likely it's Cam Johnson, 3 first-round picks, because they said they've vet deals and multiple firsts. That's what this trade would look like. And as it would be nice to kind of build for the future, and that's what we do, but you also have people for now. That Spurs team, while being a very good team, I don't believe is a contender this season, but in a couple years could be. And if you want to go that route, let me know. Do you think that this trade would actually be worth it? How good do you think Dylan Harper is? Is he worth more than 3 first-round picks? Cam Johnson, Keldon Johnson kind of flopping there. Cam's better than Keldon, but obviously with the picks and everything. Do you think that's a fair trade? Do you think the Spurs need more? Are we hoaxing them? Like, what do you guys think in the comments about that trade? But that is about what we have here for Spurs Digest. Again, I am Keenan Warner. Let me know in the comments what you feel about Harper on the move, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.